Okay, so what we're going to be talking about is now the generics, both in terms of the generic class and generic methods, because we can have only just a method to be generic, not the whole class. And I can have a class to be, the whole class to be generic, so it's up to me. I have the option, me the developer, to decide what do I want. I would like to have the whole class to be generic, like the array list, or I just need just one method in my class to be generic. I don't need the whole class to be generic. So it depends on my needs. I will just design and develop whatever is suited to me. Now, let's say I'd like to have what we've said before, like a calculator that will add any kind of numbers, regardless of what they are. And now what I'm going to do is to have a generic class. So I just created this calculator. There's nothing in it. This is where the main is. By the way, I can have the main to be also here if I want to. I can just take it out from here and put it here. It's not a problem. I can have everything in one place, just the main. But I used to just for organizational purposes, to put the main separate from the other classes, so I don't get mixed up. But if you want, the main is just one method that is static and has a special name. So I can just take this basically and then put it in my calculator. Then every time I run, it's going to run this thing like normal. But now I'm just using two classes, one that is going to be the one holding the main, and the other one is the one that has the code. So let's just leave it this way. So we said, like, if you would like to have a generic method, a generic class, I just need to mention that this is some kind of type. And generally it's referred to a capital letter, but it can be anything. It's just, and this is just a name that you can change it to whatever you want. Now this E means, now I'm saying that this calculator is going to need a data type to be mentioned when you create an object, when you create an instance. If you don't, it's going to be by default the object that is going to be the data type for this E. So let's say I'm having like a variable E, this is number 1 or N1, just variable 1 or V1 and V2. Now V1 and V2 are going to be having a data type that is not specified here. It's going to be specified at runtime when the class is going to be instantiated. Now let's add the constructor just to initialize those, and as you can see, the constructor is also doing the same thing. It's just ev1, ev2, and I'm going to just initialize them. And let's just also have the toString that displays the v1 and v2. Now, what if I'd like to add? And I just would like to add, let me take a simple first, the simple, I just would like to display the addition of these things. So I'm going to return nothing. So return void, and I'm going to add these two numbers. So this is just going to add the number 1 plus number 2, and I'm going to display them on the screen. So you just need to do n1, it's called v1 now, v1 plus v2. But it's not going to work, because v1 is any data type. How can I benefit from any data type? How can you add plus to a student and another student? This plus works only with some data types that are numbers, so this is not going to work. One thing that I can do is to put a condition now on this data type to be, I cannot accept anything. I just would like to accept only some kind of subclasses of a special class that I can do. But before that, let me just test this by creating an instance of calculator. So calculator now, if I just, this is my new calculator. Now the thing is, if I don't specify the data type here, by default it's object, because everything in here is from object, so that's going to be the default data type. Now I'd just like to show that what if I specify that this is a double, for example. Now using this, you can see that it's going to call which constructor. I'm just trying to get the constructor to be called. You see now, why is it? Let me just do it differently. Maybe let me get the memo. Now, new calculator, and it doesn't suggest. That's weird. Okay, NetBeans is not helping. I don't know why. It should, but I cannot do this because it knows that there's some kind of, there should be But I don't know why it just always suggests v1, v2 to be of object, even though it's E. It's kind of weird. It should be double. That's what I wanted to see. What do you mean U double? No, I wanted NetBeans to show me that now v1 and v2 are going to be double because of this. They're not going to be objects, but it seems like NetBeans is not getting that these are not object anymore. These are double. They should be double because this is the class double that I'm using. Anyways, let's just use that. Now if I do something like this, these are the double values, the primitive data type, but because the primitive data type is going to be converted, wrapped under this wrapper class double, so it's going to be working. Now if I would like to enter anything else than a double, let's say for example something like this, it is okay. Oh, something is happening. So okay, this is not behaving as I expected. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to click on this, clear everything. Something is happening, see? Well, but this is because of this. Oh, maybe this is why it's not helping, because this is not compiling right. I don't know, maybe now I'm confused, because this is not supposed to work. Is it? That's weird. Let me just do something. I'm going to test the limits of this. If I do this, for example, it works. Because now everything is object. And why is it object even specified that this is a double? You know, when it's specified it's a double, it's a double. Okay, hold on. Maybe, yeah, that makes a difference. Okay, now I got it. But still, that means not helping, is it? No, it is. No, that's showing. Okay, that's the difference now. Yesterday I was saying something that is wrong. I said that they're all equal. You can do this or do that. It doesn't matter because it will be the same. That's what I was saying, right? I was saying that you can do something like this. Let's say, for example, if you do this or this or this, it's the same, right? That's what I said. That's not true, because if I don't mention this, I mean these two, this one and this one are the same, because I'm not mentioning the data type, which means it's going to take it up to the object. That's why if I do this, this is going to work. Oh no, now it's not working. Come on. Okay, now this is going to work. Well, okay, fine. I'm just getting lost now. And it worked just earlier this way. Anyways, now it says equality. Now, if you do this and double, now they're the same. If you remove this, no, you can't. If you can't, just leave it empty like this. Well, this is still now the C is going to be object, and then you're initializing them with double. That's why you have this, or this is going to be not acceptable. But if I put 3.5, for example, well, exactly, this is upcasting, and that's why it works. But my problem is, I was wondering this. Now my base class should be double. That's why when I was doing this, I was expecting this not to work, because this is going to be normally calling the calculator with E to be a double, but it doesn't for some reason that honestly I don't know. But if I do this or this, now I don't know exactly what's the difference, honestly, so I'm going to stick to what I know. When I use this double like this, I'm going to use the calculator and mention that it's double. So this way I know that I'm putting some condition that this should not be anything else but the double data type. And the other parts I need to double check to understand why exactly it's confusing like that. But if I use this, that's what it serves the purpose that I'm interested in. Now I cannot do that except if I just remove this, for example, and also this one. Now it becomes object.
Can we just make the constructor to be generic so it can work?
You want the constructor to be generics? What do you mean?
The method, just the method to be generic.
No, because this is going to complicate more if I just make a generic method within a generic class. It's more complication. So, but I'm going to get into that. But what you could do, for example, I could do this. I can put double. So, for example, now I'm fixing. This is not generic. I'm fixing that this constructor works only with double. The problem is, you see, how can I make a double into E? So, it's tricky. So I'm going to leave it like this. And then what I'm going to define and call the constructor is going to be called with the one that is double, which means it's going to make this v1 and v2 be double. Now that's not what I wanted to do because, well, this is just the basic thing. I want to have this add to work. Now to get the add to work, I cannot do this because v1 now is just any data type. Is E. It can be any data type. It's not even a number because I'm not extending. Now if I'd like to put some condition, I want it to be accepting only subclasses of number. Now this does, it just adds some, well, just add some missing documentation things. So this is like a type that inherits, that is a subclass of number. Now this thing is going to get me closer to what I would like to do, something like that. But it's not working by default, even though this E is a number. But I need to specify something that will make it work. And let's see now if I put v1 dot. Because of this number, now it makes a difference. It shows me something. To compare it to before, if I don't have this, v1 dot is going to show me anything from object. So this is all coming from object, as you can see. And it shows me all in bold because everything is coming from object. Because it's now like an object. v1 is object. Everything hits from object. But if I put extends number, now I have some methods that comes from number. And check, some of them are kind of interesting because it can convert to a double, to int, to low, to short, etc. So it has some methods that are interesting, which means now this v1, because I would like to have it to be able to convert to a double. If it was an int, an addition of int is okay, but what if it's a double? The double work with int and double. So I'm going to make, for example, like this. And the same thing with double value. What this does, I'm taking v1 and convert it to a double, and I add it to v2 that is converted to a double. The result I'm displaying on the screen, and here I have my method add that works with any data type. Now if I run this thing, okay, I have this initialization. What's the purpose? I don't know. Let's just clean. I don't understand why. And run it again. It's an exception in the Java. No such method in it. I'm confused. What is this? It says the constructor. There's no such method. Let's go back here. The constructor takes 2 calculator. Well, I'm not getting it. This is just a warning to use this diamond reference, which seems to be the same, but I don't understand why. What's the difference between them? But still, okay, fine. Now I'm confused even more. So why allow item? And this is not working. Now this is working. Okay, very fine. Now I think there's a problem with NetBeans, clearly, because this was working as soon as it worked. Now this double started working as well, which is normally, this is the standard way. I mean, let me close this NetBeans and open it again. Okay, let's run it again with the hope that we don't see any more glitches like that. Okay, fine. Now this is working as expected. Let me now do something. C.add is just going to work, and it's going to show me the addition of these two, which is 9. That works fine. Now, what happens if I make it to be int? Now the integer is going to be integer, but the problem is 3.5 is not an integer, so it's not going to be acceptable. But I can do this. But see, this int is going to also show me that the add is going to work. It's going to show me at the double value. But this works with more than one data type, which is serving my purpose. This is one way to do that. There's no simple way to have like the addition work with any data type because of this class data type, but at least we have something that works. Now, what if I'd like to return, instead of void, I wanted to return something? Well, the same idea. I cannot return E, because E is, let's say that I return this thing. So I cannot return this, because E can be any data type. But I know that I converted to a double. I can do that, or this, because this is going to be a double value that is going to be returned. I can just, the add is going to always return a double value, regardless of what data type this is going to be, initialized with. So that's one way. But anyways, the idea is this data type is becoming like a variable that I can use. I can have more than one data type if I want to. So I can have E1 and E2, let's say, or data type 1. This can be any name. So if I have more than one, generally I'd like to use something like this, for example. So this is data type 1, and I can have also another one, data type 2. If I want it also to be a number, I can also make this data type 2 to have some kind of extend something, if I wanted to extend something. Or if I want it to be open, it can be anything. So now let's say the first data type is going to be used for V1 and V2. The second data type is going to be used for, I don't know, let's say V3. No, I meant 2 here and 3 here. Now this has more than, it just needs to have some kind of comment. There's some kind of Java documentation. Now, if I need to initialize that, I just need to do something like this. Now this is data type 2 and V3, and copy and paste. Now I have 2 different type of data types, and I can do something with that data type through. So I'm going to, I don't know, make it private, and then have a getter. How about that? So let me get just a getter. I don't want to have a setter. Well, let's put a getter and setter. Getter and setter only for this V3. So just this get C is going to return this data type, and get V3 and set V3, which is going to take this and put it. So whatever data type I'm using is going to be used now. For example, if I use a string, whatever, this string is going to be used. But now I need to mention that I need just to have, this is the first data type, that's going to be data type 1. Now I need to mention something data type 2. So now the second one should be something. For example, if it's like a string, it can be a string, and I need just to also do the same here. And it seems that this or this is the same, but again, I don't know, maybe there's a difference. Honestly, I have no idea. So I just use this one and then be sure that what I'm doing. Now this third one can be just display the or maybe put it in this toString. I can in the toString add this V3. So this is going to display the V3, which is this. So whatever, the idea is that if you want to have different data types, you can, and this is one way to do that. Now, what if I'd like to have just one method that is generic? I have a class, and then I can have just the method to be generic. I can have a class generic to have one method to be generic, but I don't want to add more confusion. I'm just going to take another example, just a new generic method, and just I'm going to do a generic method to do, for example, like this thing here. Like I'm going to have a class, and inside that class I'm going to have a generic method that exchanges the position of two different elements in an array. What kind of array is it? Int, double, float, whatever, I don't care. It's just going to take whatever the data type and then swap them. So let's say let's call it new class, just that's going to be enough. So this class is not generic, but it's going to be having one of the methods, public void. It doesn't need to return anything. So this is the generic method. So if you want it to be generic, first of all, let's go. This is swap. I'm going to call it swap. So it's going to take some kind of data type. So I need to say, for example, like e, or this is data type of the array. Or this is going to be an array, so I want it to be e like this. But how to mention the same way in the class? If I do it this way, that means that the e is in the class. This is coming from the class, but the class is not generic. I want this e to be coming from the method, and you just put it somewhere before the return type of that method. Yes. Sorry? No, you can have many methods generic. It's just as much as you want. That's okay. The same thing. You can have that method that takes more than one type. So if I have different types, type 1, type 2, whatever, etc., I can just have different types. But the idea is that you need to mention that this e means this is a variable data type. And now this, I'm going to, in order for me to swap the elements of the array, what I need to do, maybe I need to mention swap which element with which. So I need to have like two I and j. So I need to swap I and j from their places. So I need to know which ones I should swap. Now to do that, I need to declare a temp and put array of I in it. What's the data type of temp? It's the same data type of the array, it's e. And then I can do the same thing that I used to do. I is equal to array. Let me copy. I plus 1. And then this, sorry? Yeah, sorry, j. I forgot, I should be j. It's going to be having temp. So now this thing over here is going to be swapping two arrays regardless of what the data type of that array is. So let's try that. So I'm going to, I don't need to, let's just put this into comments. No comments. And let's just create a new array. How about this? Int array is equal to, and let's put some values there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I just would like now to create a new class. Remember, this new class, this method is not static, so I need to create a new object from that new class. So I'm going to create, and this is my object from the new class. That's the only way for me to be able to use that method for now. And I need to do obj.swap, and I can use the array. And then I'm going to swap between the first and the last. How about that? The last is array.length. But it doesn't work. Do you know why? The array is type int, so? No, this is generic. The swap is generic. If I go to it, but type E is when I define the method, I said that this should work with any data type. Extend numbers? No, it's not about extend numbers. Because you forgot. The problem is exactly int and not integer. Because int is a primitive data type, and when you work with generics, generics do not work with primitive data type. They work with class data type. So if I'd like to have an int, well, there's no option but to use this. It's an array of integer, not an array of ints. And you see, this is going to be converted to an array of int, which be the same way that they were primitive data types, but this time they are class data types. The proof that it's a class data type, even though I declared it the same way I used to do, is that if I put array 0 dots, I'm getting some methods, which I don't get if it was an int, a primitive data type. If it was like an int, a primitive data type, dots, because it's primitive data type, there's nothing, there are no methods. But because it's a class data type, now there are some methods, and generics will work with class data types. And then if I do this, now you can see it's working normally. Now let's just display that array. So for me to display the array, I'm just going to do this array dot length, and then as out array dot I, and put a space, not even a space, yeah, a space, and then don't go back to the line. And now at the end I go back to the line, and let's run. And I have index array and out of bound exception. Why is that? Because I'm swapping with the array.length, which is 5, and there's no 5 here. There's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the maximum index. So I just need to get my things straight, and don't forget that when I want to access the last index, is the array.length minus 1. Now that's why I had that. Now you can see just swap the first one, the second one. Now the good thing is, you make them double, but it doesn't work to be converted to a double, as you can see, because int cannot be converted to the data type double. But if I do this, now the array is initialized as doubles, so that's why the class data type is going to be able to be initialized. And now this is going to be working, the swap is going to be working with doubles. So now this thing here works with any data type. How about string? I just need to initialize the array to be an array of strings. Okay, that's enough for me. Okay, I made a mistake here. Now if I just swap them, it just swaps. So it works with any data type. If I have student or whatever, scanner, anything. Now the other thing that I'd like to do is, if I have some class like this, which I'm not interested in the class itself, I would like to be able to use methods from that class. It's better to make it static. And then because it's better to make it static, it means that I just don't need to do something, create an object. I can just, from the class, dot the name of the method, and this is going to work. That's better than having to create an object, and then I don't really need the object. What I need is just to use this method, so I can just make it thing. So just to summarize, this is a method, by the way, that I can also have I can have this method swap to be inside of a generic method, in generic class. It doesn't hurt. Static or not static, that's not an issue. But just it's possible to have now that this swap, it works with any different data type. If I wanted to work with the same data type, that one of these variables, I can just make it data type 1 or data type 2, whatever I want. So it depends on what I'd like to do. So that's it about this generic methods and generic classes. Now to practice that, I just would like to have you, well, wait, this is exactly, basically, you can do this. I just did it with you now. Now the next thing is to do this one. which is working with generic classes. And that will be the exercise that we'd like you to do. Now, try to do this, do it again, to make sure that's the same thing that we just did, and like a method that is generic. And then we do a generic class, this one.
What about the assignment?
That's the most important part, right? The assignment.